right. Hi, everyone. This is the beginning of a new series that I called, I guess, appropriately, What Keeps You Up at Night, with a wide array of guests and the ability to question people on what they think will be changing the status quo, challenging business as usual. So it's a new series I'm incredibly excited about. To be totally honest, I am waiting for my guest, dear. Uh, um, Leslie, can you hear me? I don't see you. This is, Jeremy starting from scratch. And I hope Leslie will be able to join us soon. So, new series. Thank you for being such good readers and good listeners on this Substack newsletter, and I hope this is a way to generate even more conversation, even more volume in terms of conversations, and in a way to continue the conversation. Dear Leslie, can you hear us? Dear Leslie, hi Leslie.
Hello, how are you?
I'm awesome. It's kind of weird because your camera is on the side, but you know what? It anyway, you look
Okay,
like
let me
nice. Ah, now we see you.
Okay,
Now
much
we see
better.
you.
Yes.
Leslie, thank you so much for joining us. It's striking, how appropriate a dear friend of a very long time. So nice to reconnect with you, and thank you for being my very first guest. You are a leading expert in global gas markets and energy geopolitics. You are the founder of the advisory firm Energy Vista and the host of the Energy Vista podcast. So thank you very much for joining us. And let me ask you my key question, Leslie, what keeps you up at night?
Well, thanks for having me, Jeremy. So happy and honored to be part of this webinar. I don't know how you call it on Substack. So it's a broad question. And as many people, we have different facets in our life. So just as a little joke, as a parent, many things keep me up at night. Notably, how much reading do my kids have these days? What's the level of history teaching at school? And the fact that increasingly, I'm kind of upset about the way history is being taught, more by picking themes, which can, it's easier to drive them ideologically than if history is being taught chronologically.
Yeah.
But let me wear now my professional hat. And these days, because my expertise is at the intersection of geopolitics and energy and trade, there is a lot to digest. And a few years ago, I've been advocating strongly for the US not to abort too fast its energy superpower. The US is an unparalleled, gas and oil giant these days, and that has been driven mostly by the shale gas revolution. And it's a huge competitive advantage for the US, for the economy at home, and for its relationships with trade partners abroad, and as a diplomatical tool to as a leverage in negotiation. But it has rightly used so as any countries would use their competitive advantage. However, these days, I'm a bit worried that the US could abort or actually threaten this leverage, especially in its relationships with European trade partners. And if you look at the current, I mean, recent news cycles and developments, Europe has been freaking out and maybe overreacting to the Greenland saga. But at the end of the day, there is not much that Europe can do. At least on the energy front, in terms of its relationship with the US. Europe imported more than 100 million tons of LNG in 2025. It was 25% up compared to the previous year. And just looking at gas, right, and LNG, US LNG represents 56% of all the European gas imports, I mean, LNG imports. So it's huge. So there is an interdependence. But what's interesting also is that Europe needs energy, and so to have a functioning economy too, because we remember that after the war in Ukraine, there was a shock to the system, and Europe realigned, rewired its energy flows, and was very happy to be rescued by the US. But what worries me the most is to fall also in the political rhetoric trap. We know the man in the White House, we know his style, and sometimes I feel that there is an over exaggeration or an overreaction. I mean, Greenland might have been a different case study, but I think that sometimes I'm wondering, who does it profit to create a wedge or divisions in the transatlantic relations? And because at the same time, there are no many alternatives for Europe right now.
Mm.
So it doesn't mean that Europe shouldn't diversify and Europe shouldn't respond and think about the long term, what to do next. But sometimes I'm worrying about this overreaction and this, like, some people, some factions actually playing this transatlantic divide.
Yeah. This is absolutely fascinating, Leslie, and thank you. I draw many implications. Number one, you need to come back again so we can talk about teaching history to our kids, because I think that's an important topic too. But one insight that I draw among many others from what you're saying is the real risk when you're the United States or when you're the European Union probably comes less from Russia and China than from yourself, and yourself shooting yourself in the foot for political reasons, for ideological reasons, and not looking at even geological realities on the ground, or in the ground rather. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and like, I'm a European, I'm an American. Like, for me, transatlantic relations are so valuable for peace, for stability, for democracies, and have inspired the whole world, right? We need strong relationships. And when it's not strong, it benefits our enemies, China.
Hmm. Hmm.
They are always, playing this division card. And I agree that, we are worst enemies inside, like ourselves internally. But I still think that the US cares about Europe, but wants Europe to look a certain way, and is worried. So, as an ally, as a friend, is it okay to give tough love? And truth sometimes hurts. But where does the coercive arm, like the economic coercive arm of the US? I don't like. So I think energy and tariffs, they are tools, right, in the toolbox. But how far is too much? And with an ally, what are you abusing too much your power? And let's face it, the US is still a big power.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that allies and partnerships are so important and need to be treasured.
And that too, is a fascinating insight that I draw from what you're saying, in the sense that, for all of the talks about deglobalization, or for all of the talks about even fragmented globalization, a topic I speak a lot about, I kind of get the feeling, worrying about what the next status quo might look like, that you take the US and the Europeans, and by the way, you take the US and China, they make me think of this old couple that can't live with one another anymore. They hate each other's guts, but to some extent, they can't live without one another either. And that divorce has become completely impossible.
So I think, what the US part of the US national strategy is to recreate some kind of sphere of influence in a way and removing China from the Western hemisphere. So, you know, you have this part of the world, I have this part of the world, and, don't mess up with Venezuela, with Panama, and don't get too close, even Greenland and your submarines or tankers or ships in the Arctic. I'm keeping this sphere, and that's mine, and I will be responsible for the security in this sphere, and also have a priority on the minerals and energy resources. I think where we are now in kind of this new world order emerging.
And last question, therefore, is this a Cold War redux, or is this something unforeseen and unprecedented, do you think?
I think it looks a little bit like the Cold War, where it's the US against China this time, and it's who can acquire as fast as possible as much resources, especially for the AI race, minerals notably, but also oil, gas, like whatever you can bring to your to your companies to build the fastest and the cheapest, the underpinning of this new economy will matter a lot. I think it's also relevant on how the other countries are positioning themselves, right? Like the Europe, notably, like the mid powers, like how do they react? And a little bit like in the Cold War, some want to be non-aligned, some don't want to pick a side, some are trying to still exist while there is this big competition and rivalry going on. And I think the US eventually will ask its allies to pick a side, or to only trade or mostly trade with the US and have preferential treatments. And so it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, and whether or not that's viable is an open question for a future conversation, right?
Oh,
Leslie, thank you so much for being the first guest on this show. I really appreciate it. I'm so grateful reconnected. You're always welcome, and I hope we continue this conversation soon.
same here. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you everyone for following.